Hello, my DevNation friends. I hope you are doing well. I hope it's not too hot. There's a heat wave here in Europe. I know there are some crazy temperatures. Our colleague Alex told us it was 38 degrees Celsius. That doesn't mean anything for you in the US, but sorry, I'm not good enough to make the conversion. Anyway, new tech talk, awesome guest. Today we will talk about metrics. It's pretty easy to add a metrics library, especially in Quarkus. But what do you do with this metrics? What are the best practices? So today, to speak about this, please welcome Anna. Hey, Anna.
Hey, Sevi. Long time no see.
Exactly.
Online, at least.
Life, exactly. So are things good?
Good, very good. I don't experience as much heat wave as you or Alex, but it's going to come here in the Netherlands as well very soon. So enjoying it while it lasts, the weather that's not so warm. But to be honest, for us here, we're looking forward to more sun, more warmth, and all the other stuff. So bring it on. It's just because it's going to be 2 days, so it's fine.
Oh, 2 days is fine. Okay. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm ready to go. I hope everybody is excited about this tech talk about some extra micrometer practices using Quarkus, and of course to try on the code as always, because I'm planning to share that, and of course raise questions, and I will address some questions that I received throughout the time about this code as well in the session. So yes, I'm ready. And
okay, let me bring the stage, and I go offline. All right, good luck.
Thank you very much. So everybody, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Extra Micrometer Practices with Quarkus. Well, you can find this presentation, these slides, you can find them at dn.dev/extra Quarkus metrics. So you have this lovely short link that you can further use to locate everything. And because you're going to go to the slides, probably at the end, you're going to see there's a QR code that gets you to the actual code that I used during the session. A little bit about myself. But if you're followers of the DevNation events and the Tech Talks, probably we've met before. But for those of you that are new to this talk, I'm Anna. I'm a Java champion and certified architect. I'm currently working as developer advocate for Red Hat, and I am passionate about solving scenarios that are a bit more complex using Java frameworks. And of course, Kubernetes and multiple cloud providers. The complex it is the scenario, the better for me. I love to do some research work and to answer questions. You can find me on Twitter at AMBRA1508. This is my Twitter handler, where I share slides or workshops that I work on or other good technical stuff that I am contributing to, so that you can have an easier life when interacting with different technologies. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about metrics and why are those important and what metrics actually matter for us as developers, because we will dive into the code a little bit later, but let's see what matters for us as developers. So first of all, to understand metrics that matter, we have to think about what matters for us as developers in terms of metrics, because you can find a lot of metrics in the wild, coming from infrastructure, coming from application side, what actually impacts our work and what are we going to improve to our applications. So the first one that I'm going to talk to you about is throughput. So it's important to observe the throughput variation to know how many containers, especially if we're talking about distributed systems and microservices, to know how many containers and their respective resources are needed to support the traffic that comes to your application. So for example, let me tell you that for write-intensive applications, the application throughput will increase with the number of containers. So the more throughput it will be if you have more containers working there. But if you're having read-intensive workloads, the application throughput may experience throughput valley with increasing number of containers, not so much, not going so high, because there are memory limitations. And if your application is both intensive from write and read perspective, then you will have to look very carefully to resource utilization and have a fair resource sharing and ensure that even more. So pay attention to these kind of stuff. Second metric that is important for us as developers to know about is memory, because we need to actually know how the programming language that we're using, the framework that we're using, is allocating the memory, so that we would know how our application will scale. And of course, different programming languages allocate memory different, and that's why it's important to know a little bit about our programming language and how it allocates memory as well. Another important metric is queue time. So it's important to observe how requests are flowing, for example, from load balancers to the web apps, or how are evolving the background job worker queues. So there are a few queues that makes it very important for us to look into. There is some time spent between the external load balancer, for example, and the actual reach of the request to a specific microservice. So it's important to know, even that maybe it sounds that's not going to be much time spent on those, it's important to know how much time it's spent by the transaction to go through all these parts. And especially if you're running some background jobs, like scheduled jobs that have a specific order or are triggered a specific time for your application to run okay, then you have to be aware of how those are evolving as well, and observe metrics of those as well. Furthermore, there are two more metrics that matter. And by the way, some of those metrics we're going to look into the application that we're having today and in the dashboards that we're going to use today. So they're correlated. It's important to know the average response time. So to know how is the average response time for the transactions that are going through our distributed system. Because, well, as you guessed, this has high impact on end user satisfaction. And as many of us, we have all been end users of different systems in time, and the fastest a transaction is happening for us, the more happy users we are, right? And last but not least, error rates. So it is important to track the error rates, meaning to know the percentages of failed HTTP errors, to know the percentages of logged exceptions or the thrown exceptions. And typically, monitoring error rates are critical for the performance of our application. Even when we're catching the exceptions or when we're treating the exceptions, it's important to actually look into how many times we got into those exceptional places. So now we talked about metrics, but this talk is about metrics with Quarkus, right? So why Quarkus? Well, we're talking today with metrics with Quarkus because Quarkus has an amazing developer experience for us Java developers. It comes with a lot of great stuff, meaning live reload, continuous testing to help us to have consistent testing and to warn us if we have not updated a test for a specific part of our application. It comes with dev services so that we don't end up all the time spend a lot of time bootstrapping our application and bootstrapping the setup for our application on our locals. And another important feature is remote development, where I put here in the slides. This is why it's important to have the slides. There's a link on how to use the Quarkus remote development and how is that helping you to do the debugging, for example. Secondly, Quarkus can have both imperative and reactive way of programming in the same application, and they work great together. So it's adapting to your development requirements. It's, of course, from the metrics perspective, it comes with a lot of flavors, a lot of micrometer extensions. So you can instrument your application using micrometer and integrate that with the registry of your choice that is located maybe with Prometheus, Datadog, GMX, Stackdriver, Azure Monitor, and many more. So micrometer is going to be used today in application side to instrument the runtime. So we're going to instrument the runtime of what we're building as developers. But we can use tools like Prometheus to actually gather those metrics. And Grafana, for example, to make beautiful dashboards so that we know the performance in a much more, visual way, because we are humans, and when we see pictures, when we see graphics, we understand way better than just looking at numbers. And lastly, it has the OpenTelemetry extensions. So this is great because you can use the OpenTelemetry extension to trace services and also correlate the metrics with the traces. So not only know, about the average response time of your transactions, but also know where your transactions have traveled and correlate those together. So those being said, this is a session with code. So seeing is believing. And we're going to start to code by using code.quarkus.io. And of course, if you want to start using micrometer, you can use the Quarkus extension, Quarkus micrometer. That will help you to instrument the runtime. But if you're using a registry, like today I'm going to use Prometheus, you can also add the ones that are specific to the registries. So now let's go to the code.quarkus.io and have some fun. So going to code.quarkus.io, I'm just going to keep the org.acme thing, and I'm going to just put here micrometering with Quarkus. What we're going to build today, we're going to build a Java 11 based microservice. And if you're going to look into the code in the repository, you're going to see that this microservice has actually been evolved throughout time from Quarkus version 1 to 2, the latest one. So if you want to do this from scratch, what you would need, because I'm actually building some REST services, I'm going to need the REST Easy Classic, the Quarkus REST Easy, with the REST Easy Classic JSONB for my services. I would like, as always, like have a view of what I'm building in terms of REST services. So I'm using the SmallRye Open API so that it comes also with Swagger UI so that I can see what's going on over there. Furthermore, this application of mine is persisting some data and is getting some data from a database. And for this specific case, I just use H2 because it's in memory, and it was much more easier to like demonstrate because the focus is on metrics. It's not necessarily on what type of JDBC connection I'm using. And unlike the other cases when you probably see myself or my colleagues using Hibernate ORM with Panache, this application is going to use the Hibernate ORM, the simple extension, not the one that includes Panache as well. So, and you'll see why in the code as well, why I chose that approach. Furthermore, it's a micrometer talk. Okay, so, micrometer. And see, as I mentioned earlier, we can use either micrometer metrics, and this will get the metrics to give us the possibility to instrument the runtime using micrometer. But if we want more, we can actually send the data to one of the registries, and in this case, I preferred Prometheus. So to enable Prometheus support for micrometer, I just use Quarkus micrometer registry Prometheus one, right? So this is so that I can have a connection with Prometheus and for everything to work really, really nice. Furthermore, since I'm going to deploy this at some point in the Kubernetes cluster on my Red Hat developer sandbox, I'm going to also use some parts to assess the health, because one good thing that I can tell you before like going into more code is like, is good to gather metrics regarding health endpoints as well, because you need to know in coordination with how many restarts were per your container, what actually generated those restarts of your container. So was there enough memory? Was there enough CPU? So it's good to also correlate the health data with what you're building. And of course, we need to containerize, so I'm just going to add jib so that I don't use the Docker daemon to build my container image, and of course the Kubernetes extension. Okay, Quarkus Kubernetes. So this is pretty much what I'm using for my code. It's quite a lot. Maybe some of you can say, hey, it's quite a lot, but yeah, we want to just make a little bit more complex this application. Let's generate it, and then you can download it and have it on your local. But I already have it from my GitHub repo, and I can work on it. And I already did some customizations over it because we're just going to focus a little bit on metrics. However, to give you a flavor on what I have here, I have some endpoints that I already built, and I want to instrument them better with Micrometer. And what my application is actually building is some query endpoints that query database and search in a database for different messages in different languages. And for my application, like for maybe for many of you, my application can be deployed across multiple regions. So I have to have a unified view of my metrics from these multiple regions, like how, and also to be able to compare how a region is behaving with another one, and these sorts of information. So we need to tailor these metrics to give us information on how well our application performed per region. And when we do this, we don't need to like build 3 different microservices or 5 different microservices because we are deploying this in different regions. The idea is actually to customize our application and to give to the environment what should be in the environment, and put the customizations as much as possible in the environment if they should be there. And keep at application level a very nice way to enable those sorts of customizations. So those being said, we have this very, very, very nice microservice here. Let me start it, just make sure that I'm going to hide this for a moment. Let me start this in my terminal and say nvn Quarkus dev to make sure that it's still working. I tried it a little bit earlier, but you never know. Praying for the demo gods to be with me and maybe me not forgetting something. Or it says that I have something that's not, unable to execute some tests. I failed. Yes, I know why. I'll fix them down the road. This is why it's good to have continuous testing, because it can give you some announcements like, hey, you have some issues. Okay, so let me go here and go to localhost 8080. And this is the very nice, you can see that my Quarkus version for this microservice started when it was 1.11.3, but is actually supported with 2.9 version. However, you see here, it's actually powered by Quarkus 2.9.2, but I didn't update the initial page in the meantime. Also the Swagger UI. And before we're going into the, deeper stuff, I can show you something very nice about building container images. You can build container images even from the Dev UI, and you can choose which type of build you want to have with jar, mutable jar, legacy jar, or native. And of course, builder type and click on build. So this is another nice feature of the Dev UI, aside from others. But if you're likely interested in metrics and where are metrics enabled by default, if you haven't configured anything in your application and you didn't do anything, just added the micrometer extension, where you find metrics is a /q/metrics. And you see already some metrics here, The reason being is because by default, Quarkus will try to export some URLs that are found in your application. We'll try to export the JVM-related metrics, which are very important if you're building a microservice that is powered by JVM. Of course, then you're not going cloud native. The case of this one is to be powered by JVM, by the way. And you have more and more metrics here that can help you instrument the application. So these are the defaults. Keep the defaults and instrument the defaults along with your customized ones. So this is the first advice when starting in the keeping a metrics world. Good. Now we have this part, but I told you that I want to deploy my application in multiple regions, right? So if I want to deploy my application in multiple regions, what I can do and have a global view of what am I building as a developer, and in how my application is behaving in different regions, is by going here in application.properties, making this a little bit bigger, and enabling some customization per region. You see here, you see the global region, and default one is CE, and of course there's some custom meter sample. And I can override this when my application is going to be running inside the container, so that I don't need to all the time go and make another microservice just because I'm deploying in a different region. How am I reading these customizations on the application side? Because I need to make them application aware. So how you can do it is by actually going and creating class, actually interface, where you can have some global tags, because these are actually global tags. This is why I prefix them with global. So I'm going to say global tags config, and this is going to be an interface. Let me make this bigger. And this interface, global tags config, I need to like, say to it, hey, config mapping, and I want to map to this interface all the, the configurations that are here. Let me split and move to the right, these two, the global region and global custom meter. These ones that are prefixed with global. And I want to annotate this as a static init safe, because I want for Quarkus to process this when it does all the static initialization of the services, so that it can like inject it when my application is actually starting. Furthermore, okay, so I'm like getting these. What else do I need to read my nice? Speaking of the right, to read my metrics, these two, I just have to do this: string region, string custom meter. So just their name from here is going to like put them and map them to my app. So that's what you can do here. Furthermore, I want to reuse a little bit this interface. I'm like just going to use a little bit about this interface and hope that nobody's going to be upset. I'm just going to define also some values, some static values for my region and profile. So why am I doing this? Because when I'm going to configure my tags, I'm going to have global view and tags for the profile of my application, meaning production. I want to know how it's behaving in production or other environments. I want to know how my application is behaving by region, and also to have information based with custom meters that I defined. So now I have this mapping. Okay, I need to create the tags. And how to do this? I'm going to the custom configuration. This class is annotated with singleton. And for me to have my own custom global configuration into account, I need to make another method here, right? Let me close this one and let me make this one bigger. Public matter filter. So all the time, if I want to make some global tags or common tags, I can have this for my registries. I have to make this kind of method that is returning a matter filter. I can say here, configure all registries. Okay. And here, of course, I should probably inject my global tags config and say tags config. And if I want to have this custom configuration propagated in my metrics, it would be good like to have it annotated with at produces, because it's going to be produced. And of course, again, here at singleton. Okay, cool. Now that I have it done here, I can do return a matter filter. And to put my global tags, I just have to provide some information to the common tags. How do I do this? I need to put, I can put a new list here and say arrays as list. I'm going to go as simple. And with my arrays.list, I'm going to say tag.off. And here I'm going to see probably the global tags config.profile. And here I just can get my profile manager, get active profile to get this information. And now let me give another tag. So I'm going to make a tag of, I always have to be key and value, global tags config dot region. And here I'm just going to say tags config just dot region, right? And let me close this one. And I think we're fine. Hope I didn't do any mistakes down the road. Yeah, I'm here, fine. Good. Now regarding the other one, the custom matter filter, this one needs to be the same thing. But instead of like returning the ID, which is like pretty similar and pretty not giving any customization over it, if I just want to give my own prefix, I can define a string prefix here and say tags config.custom meter, like give this new prefix of mine. And here I can say that if, the ID that is for that meter starts with prefix, and go here and do this return of ID dot with name prefix. So I'm just going to customize a little bit the stuff and have it here and say prefix with the prefix I had earlier, get name. And of course, put my own tag to it so that I would know how to see these metrics and have them here. Have new immutable tag of prefix. I put a dot, and also let's say a value plus tag, and here value. Okay. Let me close this one. And of course, it's saying that in case of the rest, it's going to be return ID. So this is pretty much our overridden situation for the meta filters. And probably some of you are wondering, and how I'm going to see this, Anna, at the level of my application? So how can I read these? Simple. Let's go back to the application.properties. We need to have these injected from the environment, because I said I'm going to build one microservice and the environment is going to get them. How am I going to do this? Well, this is where Kubernetes comes into action. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say here, quarkus.kubernetes.env-vars, because I'm going to configure this as an environment variable, and say env-vars.region. And for example, because right now I'm located in the Netherlands, I can say the region is Benelux, right? And I can also say, I don't know, Quarkus, because I want to also trace the metrics. I can say the trace, by the way, to connect maybe to the traces if you want to do this. You can do the env .vars .open tracing metrics exporter HTTP path. Yes, I know it's very long. /q/metrics, and said I want to have this for every region, right? So Quarkus not Kubernetes.expose, Quarkus Kubernetes.name. So give a name for my deployment, and I can say greetings Benelux. Now, what is this going to do? Let's see what this is going to do. It's going to the target part and look into Kubernetes and Kubernetes.yaml. So what this does is actually creating a deployment, a service, a deployment that I can use further to deploy my app. It connects hey, you're going to scrape stuff to Prometheus on 8080. And furthermore, the name for my application is Greetings Benelux, the one that I gave in my app. And now I have the open tracing exporter path to /q/metrics for the region of Benelux. Also with the live inspection and all the other great stuff. Now, if I'm going to go here and do CE, and by the way, I can do this injection from the level of the environments, then let me just have this look and change a little bit. You see greetings CE to the name, and now the region is CE. So this can be given with a different value. So all the time I'm keeping my microservice the same, but I can overwrite this when my application is actually going to start. In the interest of time, I also provided this to you in a folder called Q files, the setup for the 3 regions. So pretty much is the setup that I had in order to deploy these microservices. So let's do this and say, not target, I'm not just very used with setting up things like that. Set up benelux.yaml. And this will end up with my installation for Benelux. If you're wondering where I'm deploying, I am deploying to the sandbox. If you can get one, by the way, by going to developers.redhat.com, click on Developer Sandbox, And of course, here's going to be a very nice red button that's going to say launch your developer sandbox for Red Hat OpenShift and get you to your own sandbox. So this is my own sandbox. You can see the greeting Benelux is here and is starting to run. I can do the same for CEE. And apply for CEE as well. And you can see that everything's being applied in CEE, and there's also UKI.yaml. So the same is the same image, the same microservice with the same way of collecting metrics, but with the different environment variables so that we can simulate this. And of course, some of you are like, hey, but you have also Prometheus and Grafana. No worries. If you're inspecting the README that I'm going to share with you from the code, you can find how you can have your own Prometheus and Grafana installation on the Red Hat OpenShift Developer Sandbox, so how you can make them at minimum to have them instrumented there. Okay, so now we have these lovely services deployed. Let me go to Grafana, add my data source from my Prometheus. And as much as I would like to have the localhost 9090, it's not the localhost 9090. I need to open the location of my Prometheus and go here, save and test. So everything is working great. Now that I have my data source, I need a dashboard, to observe stuff. So create from import, discard. And where you can upload it. Say, in the GitHub, I have exported my micrometer sample dashboard so that you can replicate the same stuff and just simply import it as I do it here. And of course, select the Prometheus data source and just have it here with all the queries defined. And some of you are like, huh, wow. Yes, because these kind of dashboards, they can be exported and you can import it and you just can replicate the same stuff that I did on your local machine in your own sandbox just by setting up as in the README and using even my own image, the one that I have provided to you so that you can filter even more. Why is it nice to have those global setups? Because you can have, you can inspect what's the total search done by region. And if you're looking and exploring this one, so for example, you can have this and you can have the rate by region and sum by region, where region is your metric, your tag. When region is your tag, you can make these kind of sums and you can find out this. And you can filter even more about what's going on in a specific region for your application. Let me go back. You can have average filtering time for messages in English, for example. Remember that it was important to know the average time spent in the transaction or the average greeting generation duration over time. All these, you can explore them and look at them and see how they're behaving over time. And because these are metrics that can give you information about your application. But now you see no data points and probably you're like, oh, no data points. Patience. We have these global informations, but we sometimes need to tailor even more because we actually need to know how things are going for our application at the level of our application. So for example, if I'm going to my custom message service where I'm not using, I'm using the old style of working with Hibernate, injecting the entity manager, doing the persistency myself, and all the other stuff. So the first thing that I can do in this case, I can add the call, and I can actually instrument my database calls by counting those database calls. For example, I can do this way. I have here with counted, and of course give a value. And in this case, my value is persistency calls.find, because I want to know how are these, how my search queries are for the specific content going on and their performance. You can see this one here, and then I can add some extra tags, for example. And in the case of the extra tags, I can add a DB and of course content. So this means that the key is DB and the value is content for this one. So you can see similar here that I'm used the counted to count how many of those have been, how many creation of message have been added, for example. But in the case of filtering, where filtering operations can take longer time, you can use a timed annotation to inspect how long is going to have that happening for your database, or how long the task is going to happen. And actually, if you're looking here at the total find by queries, this is actually doing this, is inspecting what we did earlier with the counted annotation. It's looking for persistency calls find total by region. Okay, let's generate some data. And I think I can do some ch create, hope that get.ca, or no, I think I need to create some data first. So let me create some data first and give it some data and see what's going on. And of course, not last hour, last 5 minutes, I think it would be better to know how things are behaving. And of course, to see some action. Okay, so you can see now that we get some data for the profiles. Remember why we defined the profiles per region? It's great that now we can see the profiles for each of the regions, and we can look at how those are going to behave. How is the distribution of the queries when we're adding to our database information, and many more stuff. So this is like their contribution for over the 5 minutes, and how are things behaving. Great. So let's do some more adding a little bit, because I just want to make sure that I have enough data in my database. And you can see that now the find queries are starting, because I can do also some searches. And I see that, okay, there were some search Benelux. And this is great because, well, with Grafana, you probably know that you can trim for a specific region and just see one specific region or more and compare them. So that's a very nice feature of when working with Grafana and its dashboards. Okay, this is for the database part. So in case that you're not having Panache or something more automate, and you're making your own business services, because this is a business service with a custom logic inside it to interact with your database, it would be good to instrument with at least counted or at time your services, in this case, your like business services that are in between your endpoints and the actual data. Good. Let's also instrument a little bit about about the endpoints. So we have here a lot of endpoints. But for example, what I can tell you is, like, if I'm going to my where is the endpoint? Yes, example endpoint. If I'm going to my find content, I've done the same thing as earlier. I have my timed, my counted. I can count, I can inspect if it's a long-running task to find the greeting with the specific content. However, how is this going on, this method? It's doing the following. So if the end user provided the content, I mean, is searching for a specific content and is not empty, then find in the database for messages that match that content exactly, and put that those messages in a list, and of course return the list, which is great, right? But what happens if no message is returned? We don't have a way to instrument that, because all these tags here are going to instrument globally what's going on with our endpoint. It's not going to instrument all the other cases. So how are we going to achieve that? How are we going to instrument all the other cases when we are inside this? Furthermore, we want to actually relate this content. Let's say we want to relate this content and the count of this content to this one. So we want to use the same counter, but not give them more tags. If we're like to use, the usual injection, it will create another counter with different name and so on. So it's not very, very useful, very it's not keeping things together for us to look into. So the way we can do this, we can create our own dynamic counters. And I'm going to use my, and I'll let you look at the other ones, dynamic tagged counter. I'm a little bit over the time, I think. And what I need to do with this one I actually need to, this one extends an abstract class that I created called common metric details. And what this does, well, I can add my own tag to it, a string tag name. And of course, I can create, generate constructor. Okay. Of course, it's going to use the dynamic tag constructor, the one that I have there. Identifier, string tag name, and this is matter registry here. Good. My constructor. And of course, I want to be able to increment over the same counter, but using a different, of course, tag value. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find my initial counter, the one I've used there into the initialization of my registry. I'm going to use the identifier to do that, to find my counter. So say registry.counter by identifier. I don't want to have a new identifier for my counter tag value, and have it here, and import class. And of course, now that I got the counter, get ID, put the new tag, the one that I want. So with tag, and of course, new immutable tag, tag name, and tag value. And of course, after this one, counter dot increment. So to increment on the same tag. How I'm going to use this class further? Just going here and my copy paste this first and just say dynamic tag counter, and of course import class dynamic tag counter, and put it here. This dot dynamic tag counter, new dynamic tag counter, and give it, of course, a name. Put it here, another requests dot count, because it counts. Always remember that. So I'm going to say custom API greet for my for how it's going to be, because it's a customization, and of course, to which registry should this one be injected all the time. So making sure that it's in the same registry. And if I'm going to my method for finding the content, what I can do, I can say, if this messages, if I found the message in the database, this at least has one value, increment this dynamic tag counter for this content. So increment to this specific content. This is user-driven. So when you want to have metrics for something user-driven, this is very important, like to know how to increment on user-driven tags. So it's pretty much the use of these kind of counters. Otherwise, if this was not found, also increment the misses, meaning for the empty parts, because you also have to know when this is not working as expected. And if we're going here to the terminal and say get.ch, have some data, and to use over this, we can have information about how our application is behaving when there is data coming driven by the user or not. So you have this average greeting generator over time, and you can also find the total find queries by region. But what is very important for you to know is also when was no greeting found. So for example, this one is the one that's powering the lack of greetings. So if I'm looking here to the Explorer, this nice query is giving you information about how your how many empty greetings were actually not found, how many empty greetings are there, meaning how many searches didn't find anything in your database, to know how that behaved. And actually is quite good to know what's the ratio of not found stuff within your services. Furthermore, I told you that's good to know about exceptions, right? To know when the exceptional situations are happening. So to know when the exceptions are being logged, for example, I have this sum by language by exceptional greetings. When the exceptions are being caught from different languages, it's good to know, in every country, where there were occurrences of exceptions, and what was the distributions of those based on the language over there. So all the time, this relates to overall chain impacts, how the user is going to is going to receive the data and to see the impact of your application, of course, and know what you're going to improve with your application. And last but not least, it's also good for searches, for example, let me stop this, to have areas and to know how your searches have performed. And in this case, I would recommend for you to use distribution summaries so that you would know how is the impact of your searches and how well they are behaving, so that you don't get informations on that specific. And you can search in the distribution summary. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's powering the AppDex score for searches, so that you would know how that has impacted the end user satisfaction. Hope I'm not very late with everything I want to share with you, but some takeaways. Create your own global tags, because it can help you and further inspect the performance statistics for your region. As you saw, I have deployed 3 microservices, each of them coming with a configuration from outside, from the environment, and instrumented them, but have a global view, nice view in Grafana. I used annotations on top of methods. For example, I used those when I needed to inspect even more what's going on with my business logic, to count how many times a specific method was invoked, to know if it's a long-running operation, I use it timed. If I needed to follow the distribution of events, like the search case, I used the distribution summary. And I used dynamic tags when I needed to inspect things. I needed to inspect how my application is behaving and given metrics driven by user content. Because when users are inputting content, it's very nice to have how well your application endpoint has performed against specific content sent by your user. So drive your tags value based on that. I invite you to look into the code in micrometering with Quarkus and try it on your own. Try it in the sandbox. Everything is tailored to work in the sandbox and to have it over there. Follow the README instructions because the README instructions are telling you on how to install everything. And of course, if you want additional resources, you can learn more about Quarkus by going to quarkus.io or connecting with the Quarkus team on Zulip chat or just tweeting to at Quarkus.io. And you can find out more about modernizing enterprise Java by going to this ebook and going to the Quarkus cheat sheet to improve even more your application performance. I know that it was quite a lot for the session, but if there are any questions, I'm ready to receive them. Sebi, I know you're there.
Yes, I'm there. There are no questions because I think, first of all, it was really clear. It was a lot of stuff. I think people still need to process it. Even me, I learned a lot of stuff because, me, except throwing the extension and doing some timed and count stuff. No, I did not more than that. But for sure.
This is a little bit more advanced. I know.
That's more advanced, but it's great. It's great. It's so powerful and so important, all these metrics. I will for sure play with your repo and try to reproduce it. And nice stuff. It's impressive what you can do with all these metrics. Hey,
yes.
It's time. Yeah, we're a bit late, but don't worry. No one was on the channel after that, so we could hang out. Anyway, hey, Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next Tech Talk will be in 15 days. I already have my guest, and it will be Quarkus again, but a really nice project called Quinoa to handle your front end. You will see that it's really nice. The show, I'm not sure when the show will happen. Next week we are traveling with Anna. Yeah,
DevOps Poland.
DevOps Poland. If there are any French people here listening, in 2 weeks, on the 28th, there's DevNation Day France. So be sure to register. You can be there on site or virtually, okay? I will be there on site, though. If you're in Paris, please come over. And there's some comments from Fabian. Good to see Quarkus and a way to monitoring IT. Yes. This was an advanced lesson from Quarkus. Yeah, it's great to have some advanced and not just getting started stuff. Here we really go into the meat of the stuff. So yeah, again, thank you for that, Anna. I see you next week. It will be awesome.
See you next week.
And enjoy the end of the week. It's almost weekend. 1 day
Yeah.
left, and then it
Yeah.
will be weekend. Okay. Hey, let me find the correct stuff. Yeah. And hey, thank you everyone, and see you soon.
Thank
Bye
you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
bye.
Bye.